when you ranch in Middle Eastern Montana, that's what we'll say, right off the Rocky Mountain front, where do you choose to feed your livestock? Okay, so especially during the wintertime when we are feeding our livestock the most by hand with hay bales, whether they're large squares, small squares on tight occasions, or round, big rounds, when and well, not necessarily when, but where do we choose to feed the herds, both cows and horses, for their sustainment?
100% of the time on the ground.
Well, that's a good answer. Okay,
Yeah.
want to give me a better answer?
uh, uh, it depends really. Where we're at here, this place, I rotate where and are very, very systematic about where I feed. What I'm trying to do is get a flat place, relatively flat. It doesn't have to be super flat, but not down into a coulee where you're going to get, you know, stuck in a snowbank, but out where you can still move and turn a vehicle. But I will choose a portion of our winter pasture uh, and just line those bales up. And I like to try to feed into the wind so that the wind doesn't, blow that hay, especially the grass hay. The big rounds are the worst for that.
Yeah.
Blowing that hay around gets underneath of them where, the big squares that I, chunk off of the back of that feeder I built, they tend to hang together a little bit better. Even if they're grass hay bales, they tend to hang together better just because of the way the bale's designed. So putting them out there where the wind can't get to them or the direction the wind can't get to them, but you know, any way you do it in the wintertime here, we usually end up with northwest winds in the wintertime. So if you go straight north, you're going to get caught a little bit. If you go straight west, you're going to get caught a little bit. And if you go into the wind, then you're not square with the world on the rest of your pasture lines. So me being kind of OCD that I am, I just gut it out and I lay it out in a nice long strips, as long as I can for that length of ground wherever obstacle stops us, whether it's a fence or a coulee or something like that. And then when I'm done feeding that out, and it may take 4 or 5 days to be able to go the length of that pasture where I can feeding off with different feedings. But then I like to move right to the edge of where I was before, kind of where those cows, you'll see where they've been eating, standing on either side of it and pooping. And then so I'll like to lay that next bale out or string of bales so that they're eating on it, and where they stood and pooped before, they're going to kind of not quite overlap. So, it's fairly systematic about being able to take that manure then in the spring and run a harrow over it, spread it out, and to kind of get a little organic matter, a little carbon return back into the ground, and then don't impact any one piece of ground too much, because that can happen too. You feed in the same spot, you'll just pound a piece of ground down to nothing and have nothing grow in the spring. So just do that throughout the entire winter, and then from one winter to the next, we just keep rotating that around.
Got about 90 seconds. So the horses, you don't really rotate as much with the horses as you do with the cows, partly because of the quantity. It's just not nearly as much
Right.
as the cow herd. But is there any other reason why you don't necessarily rotate the horse herd feeding location as much?
Well, I do. We move it. It just doesn't as evident because you're not moving it very far from year to year. But you're absolutely right. You feed one big round bale to the horses every 4 days or 5 days, depending on how they're consuming it. It's not a lot of bales, throughout a winter. So not compared to the cows where you're doing hundreds of bales throughout the winter compared to maybe 15 or 20 bales through the horse consumption. So that's the big difference there. We're rotating and we're moving it and we're doing the same thing. It's just not quite as evident.
Well, that's the feeding locations on the ranch, especially during the wintertime.